depleting. There's a lot of abandonment in our industry.
Now, I've been on that side of the table where there's always this emphasis on collecting key metrics, organizing it into a wonderful dashboard. But why does this alone rarely change decision?
What we're seeing is missing is really a formalized role or capacity within the learning teams, the L&D teams.
Hey everybody, Erick Prospero here with the Microlearning Lab. Today we're going to be discussing practical analytics for associations. Now, analytics, it's almost a cliche, right? It's a big buzzword in the space. Every conference you go to, there's always a session on analytics, on collecting analytics, but the challenge is actually using analytics to make better decisions on pricing, programs, and actual impact. So today's conversation, we are going to be discussing practical analytics beyond just dashboards and applying it to strategy with our expert today, Tamer Ali. Tamer, can you tell us a little more about yourself and your organization, what you guys are known for?
Thanks, Eric. It's nice to be here. We're a specialized learning platform provider. Our platform is called Simpatico. We're specialized in the fact that we target our product roadmap and our whole strategy for delivering professional education for publishers, professional education, and enterprise, extended enterprise training. Our platform, Simpatico, has specialized features that are typically sought after for groups that have hit a wall or threshold with their traditional LMS platforms, whether they're corporate, academic, open source. So we specialize in things like learning analytics, seamless integrations, very advanced integrations, and complex logic that these publishers look for.
Awesome. Now, let's jump into it. So where do you see learning analytics break down for associations? Like, what is the biggest shortfall you're seeing in the space tied to this?
Well, intent is always there, and intent's always good to do the things needed for data analytics. What we're seeing is missing is really a formalized role or capacity within the learning teams, the L&D teams, whatever group is really in charge of training, and it's called professional education or membership education. That role is missing. At least it's not formalized to assign to one or two people. And therefore, these groups become somewhat dependent on an external resource, an across-department group, mainly IT. There might be a business intelligence group. What happens there's a big gap in between it, and there's things lost in translation. So you see groups that say, look, we're the learning team, we need this data, and we have this great team over in this other island. But it's very hard to convey that information. So they're dependent on another group. They're also dependent on waiting for that group to be available and ready. So what happens is there's no real consistency or practice involved. And therefore you just throw things over, wait for it. They even have like maybe formalized ticket processes or things, almost like a support system. And really it doesn't become it's a reactive process versus a proactive, constant monitoring. That's the thing we see consistently.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when I was actually running the department, we had that same issue, right? We had an IT department. You only reached out to them when there was a fire. And that's the only real time where we actually leveraged their data administrators. So big differences to collecting the data versus having it. Now, what do you think's missing between actually having the data and then using this data?
So having the data is great. What's happening is the information, to have it, is then transferred to people who don't have the lens or the perspective that's that level of curiosity to explore and find the business insights. So the data's there. In fact, there's also the tools. Most of the organizations we work with have some advanced capability to pull in data and visualize them from, advanced tools like Microsoft Business Intelligence or, Salesforce, things like that. The problem is the people who are running those, as we mentioned before, they're typically very skilled and capable IT resources or developer resources, but they're not learning people. So learning people capture this data with their, the best intent, with objectives in mind, but then it conveys. So there's that missing gap in between.
And I know you have that background in terms of the tech side and the learning strategy side. So just for the novice, what learning data do associations tend to overvalue? Like what signals do they consistently underutilize as well?
Like everybody else, I mean, enrollments, it's like ticket sales or, record sales or anything else. They look at enrollments, because there might be even a direct tie into revenue. If they're offering it for free and still something return on mission, usually one of the key measurements is return on mission or profitability or revenue, right? The problem is there could be a lot disguised under that number. So, where are these enrollments happening? When? How long does it take to complete? And are they really even completing? There's a lot of abandonment in our industry as it is. And it seems to be even more pervasive in associations and professional education as some people may sign up. So there's the truancy and abandonment factors that we always tell organizations to be afraid of and aware of. Is the, truancy being, did they even come? They didn't come to class. And then abandonment is they started and they never finished. It's a big problem. Almost probably worse that they came in and saw the content and they left and they didn't complete. So those two factors are hiding in those numbers. Another one would be a little bit harder to estimate, but how long do these things take? By and large, most people who are serious and motivated take it within the time period of the month or two that they have access. If it goes beyond that, we find, anecdotally and through, the data that we see, that they don't finish it. So you have like a window of time, and if they don't, and you're not sending those reminders, you have a strong potential of abandonment.
Now, I've been on that side of the table where there's always this emphasis on collecting key metrics, organizing it into a wonderful dashboard. But why does this alone rarely change decisions, right? I mean, we can have the dashboard, we can have the analytics, but why don't you see much happening? Because I see this as a huge issue. So we always push our clients to collect certain key metrics. In fact, we're the ones following up on it, right? Mm-hmm. Whether if it's a product-oriented metric or an actual learning engagement metric, it just feels like it's something out of habit or routine.
Yeah, that's a great point, Eric. I mean, I think that, as providers like we are, we try to set our clients up to do storytelling with this data, not just show the charts. As all of us were mesmerized by the aesthetics and some of the tech of, visualizations and charts. But that's somewhat of a facade. The real value and impact, especially for executives who see that a lot, or the C-level or the stakeholders in review, would be to tell the story. And it can be very common, candid language about the program. How is our program doing? Who are our users? Who are the people coming in? Are they members, non-members? Are they physicians? They're manufacturing customers, they're B2B customers. Do we know those answers to those key questions? Who is coming in? How long is it taking them? Are they consuming the content? What content are they taking? What types of content? You have different classifications. A lot of organizations, even though they have the data, they're not able to answer that, or at least they're not prepared to answer it when they go to the executives to present. So we get relegated to the sidelines a lot in this industry because we don't prepare ourselves for those questions. And so how do we justify our roles as pivotal to the learning strategy and overall strategy of an organization when we can't answer those basic questions? So, I mean, storytelling is really what we're trying to do. And everybody knows the effects of story and the impact of story in, everyday life, whether it's in entertainment, news, journalism, whatever. Telling a story really helps convey the message. And, visualizations are great, but they alone are not. They're just fool's gold if we think that that's the reason why we should do things. So, telling that story, and very easy ones, and what are they saying in our surveys and assessment is not very advanced. It's really just pulling that data together. There's some overhead there and manual effort sometimes, but once you start doing that as a practice, that becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that leads perfectly into the next question. So when learning analytics are working well, what decisions should they take and which actions should they actually make easier? So What decisions should actually make easier for association leaders?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's decisions, but it definitely answers the questions that help frame those decisions. Meaning we can start saying, and going back to a lot of times we'll ask and advise the organization, go back to your mission and your objectives and your stated mission and your website and your documentation, and take the position that we're going to align with our data and our learning programs to those missions and objectives. Are we the leading voice for our profession? Are we representing the professional education needs of the profession and the members of our profession? So go with 3 points is we have a captive audience and we can prove it through enrollments and completions. We are building the right products in our education library in terms of enrollments, completions, satisfaction scores, survey feedback, and the diversity of usage. And we're consistently delivering in terms of enrollments and completions over time. You look at those charts. So you don't leave with the charts, we leave with those statements, those 3, like we have a captive audience, we're building the right products, we are consistently delivering. And they might be questions at first, right? Do we have a captive audience? But when you present them, those will help make the decisions for the future. And I think the decisions are, where do we put the investments in? A lot of these organizations, unfortunately, and maybe this is a very biased perspective, they're spending a lot of money on CRM installations, especially now with the advent and movement towards Salesforce and more commercial CRM and associations. But really, what is the intellectual property value that the organization has outside of membership? It's probably content and their intellectual property to building courses and exams and assessment. And we ask them to consider that and hopefully this kind of the data and these types of questions will help them inform those investments. So, if they have the proof points to state these points, then I think the decisions are investments in more learning content. Now, we would like to also say the technology behind it to deliver it, but it's really the content that really drives these organizations.
Now, how else should associations connect learning analytics to outcomes leadership actually cares about, like revenue, credential health, or retention?
I think that's a key point is that all of these can be tied to revenue and recognition. If you have a satisfied audience, everything leads to the membership retention. If you're building the right products, diversity of the products, and you're getting good feedback, that ultimately it's a direct curve. It's not any kind of magic there. Is if you do the right things and bring the right products, you're listening to them and reacting to that feedback and the changes in the interests and the demands of the audience, then that directly leads to retention, increases in retention, and revenue. And we, in fact, when we go into learning implementations, even though, we're taking it from a platform perspective, we make a charter with our clients to ask them to measure with us these things like member satisfaction scores, membership, into times that we're rolling out and seeing how, comparison, right at launch, 3 months later, 6 months later, 24 months later, these metrics, not just enrollments and completions, reduction in customer support tickets, these things all drive to membership retention and revenue.
That's interesting. Now, I know this focus and the diligence in this space might seem like a lot of work, but if an association, especially a smaller one, doesn't have a lot of resources or systems or even clean data, where do you think they should start to get meaningful data without rebuilding everything or a complete overhaul?
Well, it's a lot easier these days with ChatGPT. I think you can, we've been using AI for a long time, a relatively long time, to do things to scale data, to help visualize data, because it is a manual effort. And if you have to put the effort together and to put these things in a presentable format. However, organizations can start simple. Just like, for example, just take 24 months of data of enrollments and completions. And the third would be surveys, but take enrollments and completions for the last 24 months. And then look at not just at top level, but looking at product line or classification, like the different categories of content. You may have, webinar archives. You may have hands-on libraries, workshops, whatever the ways that the organization classifies your content. Look at the enrollment and completion trends. That can easily be done in Excel. And then also then take a look at survey feedback. Now, taking up 1,000 or 10,000 responses of text and survey feedback is hard. But you can do that now with these AI tools very easily with a $25 subscription or even maybe free. They can chart that data for you. And now these tools like Google Gemini and Microsoft Copilot, they're already built into the tools we use. I mean, we have to be careful of the nature of the data and putting it into an open public AI, and just keep that in mind. That's my caution. It's not an endorsement to just put anything in there, but those can also chart it. So you can de-identify or anonymize the persons involved in the feedback, and then put it through these tools and get general sentiment. Like, we've been using sentiment analysis for a while, over 8 years of AI use, maybe not 8 years, but at least 6 years of use of putting survey feedback in the sentiment analysis and getting, is this a positive or negative feedback? And then we've gotten to the point where we categorize it. Is this about the speaker? Is it about the content? Is it about technology? Is it relative to some bias in the content? And it does a good job of that. So these are the tools now that are somewhat democratizing the access to some of the power of evaluation and analysis in scale. So I would highly recommend it with those cautions for privacy.
Absolutely, especially for the smaller associations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost even the playing field in terms of not just content production, but analysis. I know with our clients, we've seen a huge increase in capability in that space, right? So scripting is no longer an issue. But then also we're seeing a lot of hesitation in terms of using it for data analysis or anything tied to agents. There's still a lot of hesitations, and it's starting at the top, right? There's a lot of fear of certain technology that leadership doesn't necessarily understand. And I think it's holding them back. Like, it's kind of frustrating sometimes. But onto that too, I know there's a lot of mistakes that could be made, especially with loading content, but what are the most common mistakes you see learning teams make when they get serious about learning analytics?
Yeah, it's another great one, because it's more common than we'd like to see. It's we've got a BI tool, or we have a BI team. It's there's no process in that answer. It's like, we've got the things we need, so don't worry. But really, it's, do we have that person? And that's one advice we'd give to everybody is, it doesn't have to be a new hire. It's like someone on the team that's designated to be the champion of the learning data, that's not in any capacity, and they could have an IT capacity, but really it's a full-time responsibility in that it's not borrowed time. Whatever fraction of the time of that week, it's theirs, and it's their responsibility to put these metrics together and continue to evaluate them. Not just say the big mistake of, oh, don't worry, we've got Microsoft BI, it's going to be taken care of, or we have the BI team, they're going to take care of us. They're all very capable people. The intent is not the question. It's about availability and attention. And also, most importantly, is that lens of learning and development on top of that data, that an inquisitive, curious mind that knows what they're trying to do has a much more advantage on that data analysis than someone who's just trying to pull data, who's very capable, albeit, but not, they're not mentally focused on finding things that a learning person would. So this is that big mistake to avoid.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, you'll put the request in and you're going to get exactly, if you have the one IT guy that's responsible for this type of interpretation, it's essentially an order taker, right? This is when you're getting your dashboards, your weekly updates, but there's no in-depth review beyond that, right? No curiosity, no analysis. And I think that's where a lot of dots aren't connected, right? When you're just getting exactly what you asked for. So that makes perfect sense to have somebody who has that learning and development bias, that's a little more excited and enthusiastic about the potentiality in terms of what could happen with the answers that you're getting from this story. Now, as we wrap this up, if associations could focus on one improvement in terms of learning analytics, what do you think would have the biggest impact? Like, what should they be prioritizing today, whether if it's a small association or a large association?
Well, that's another good one. Outside of that person, that champion for the learning data, I would say is list the questions in the story you want to tell. That, I think if you don't have it, I think people have learning objectives, like we want to advance our profession, we want to be the first, we want to be the top 3 choices for our profession, one of the top 3 when they look for content, because they have, competitors, both nonprofit and for-profit, and they typically want to, those are great business overall objectives, but what are the learning objectives that you're trying to answer or meet, and what are the questions that you'd like to answer? Those would be something to put on a charter or a mission internal to this group that will structure it. And then, if that person's not assigned yet, at least that'll open up the interest to someone to take that role, or multiple people to take that role, because it's an interesting one. I mean, you find really cool data just by looking at stuff in aggregate. So I would say that would be the next step for these organizations. They might say they have it. I haven't seen as much organized in that way.
Yeah, actually, I would agree. It's not necessarily a prominent role in terms of who's doing what, right? I mean, it'd be the thing is, I think there'd be a lot of interest in that too. Even if it was just an education manager, an instructional designer, just give them the extra badge of like learning analytics storyteller, right? Because, but again, because it's not tied to concrete production, it's one of those overhead things that gets pushed aside pretty easily.
That's right. And that's that's something you have to kind of overcome, is that challenge. That's a great point.
Great. Now, Tamer, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you, right? Where do you want them to find out more information about what you guys are doing? And what's a good call to action to wrap this up?
That's great. They can go to authenticlabs.io. Thank you for that, Eric. Our website is authenticlabs.io. You can find me on LinkedIn or my personal website, tamerali.me. So just my first name, last name.me. That's another way to reach me. Either way, not formal there. And my company email address is my first name @authenticlabs.io.
Awesome, Tamer. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks, Eric. Nice to see you. Take care. Have a great week.
Want to learn more about microlearning best practices? We've got you covered. Check out the video cards for more related content. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly tips and explore the description for a curated list of resources to continue your e-learning journey.